I feel that your cases primarily can be won in your depositions, and setting those up in your planning clearly starts at day one. But when you're in that moment, I really believe you have the ability to control the path of your case.
Welcome to the Tip the Scales podcast, where we discuss running and growing your law firm. I'm your host, Maria Monroy, president and co-founder of LawRank. Today, I am joined by Tom Grillo. We talked about how he was a cop, being a parent, technology, AI, depositions. I hope that you guys enjoy this episode. Tom Grillo, welcome.
Maria, thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
Thank you for doing this such last minute. I think did we plan this in an Uber yesterday?
I think so.
Or before?
Yes. Yeah. Definitely spontaneous, which is always great. But listen, I'm honored to have been chosen here today. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. So tell us name, title, law firm, and a little bit of background.
Sure. Yeah. My name is Tom Grillo, and I'm a trial lawyer in Buffalo, New York, going into my 21st year of practice. And our firm is a boutique style type firm. We have 6 lawyers. We have about 15 or 16 support staff. So a small family firm. We've been around about 59 years.
Oh, wow.
Multi-generational firm.
That's awesome.
So great. Yeah. Very, very small firm, and but big in the community.
Awesome. And you were a cop for 20 years?
I was. Yeah. Actually, a little over 20.
Really?
I was.
In Buffalo?
In Buffalo, actually a suburb just outside of Buffalo. It's Amherst, New
Okay.
York.
What was the scariest thing that happened?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I've seen a lot of scary things, from people with weapons to really sad cases of people being really critically injured, or deaths, things of that sort. So the thing about, I would say, with law enforcement and trial work is the day is usually always different. And in a strange kind of way, I think they're really closely related as well from what we do.
And you see pretty fucked up things with both, so.
You do, sadly, right? I often say, people will say, "Hey, Tom, congratulations on that case," or "I see that you're handling this case. That's great." And it's a bittersweet moment, because if you have a good case as a trial lawyer, that means that somebody had an absolute terrible day.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of crazy. It's like people want more cases, but that means that there are more accidents out there.
That's true, right? But
I
guess the blessing in what we get to do as trial lawyers is help people, right? And try and make change, and help people's lives, and hopefully make things safer.
Yeah, I mean, I hope not. I don't think most lawyers want there to be more accidents. They just want to find the people that have been in an accident so that they can help them.
I believe that. Yeah, I think
I'm sure there are a few.
I think we're here to number one, obviously do better, and we're given these tools to do that and help people. And you're right. We certainly, if there was a way to wave a wand, and if I could, do something else and remove the bad that is happening, I guess, out there, on whether it's in our roads or our communities or otherwise, sure, we would certainly love to do that. The reality, unfortunately, is I think job security is going to be here for a while.
I mean, yes, I agree. We'll see about cars, though. I do think cars are going to drive themselves sooner than we think.
Yeah, so that's really interesting, that topic of self-driving. It is, right? We've had many discussions here, this weekend at this conference about...
Tell us where we are.
Sure, yeah. So we're in Florida at the AAJ Trucking and TBI conference. It's a combination of the trucking lawyers and the TBI litigation group. So it's a really good combination of bringing folks together, not only on the medicine side, but on the trucking side. So it's been really beneficial. And getting back to, we talked about the idea of this self-driving car or these automated cars. You're right about that. I think it's changing. But I think what's going to change is the theories of liability and why are these crashing?
Mm-hmm.
Why are these crashes occur? My wife and I were in Las Vegas recently, and this may be familiar to you, but I look out my window and I see that soon to be fully self-driving taxi-like vehicle. And
they have them in Phoenix and in Scottsdale. What are they called, Matt? Do you know? Waymo. There we go. It's something like that.
Yeah.
And people get in them and the car drives itself.
Yeah. No, I mean, I know those existed, but it was the first time I've ever seen it. And you're right. Our world of things that we hope to be more safer, I think, are changing. And just let's hope that stays on the path of becoming more safe.
Yeah, I think it's crazy because when like you watch like the Jetsons or something, right? Like, and you think about the future, you're like, it feels like it would be like instant, right? Like all of a sudden, like the world changes and all the cars are self-driving. And it would be such a shock to our system. But it's introduced so slowly that it doesn't feel like such a shock. Like first it started with like your car could park itself, right? And then you have like the driving feature on Teslas, right? That was like the cool thing. And now you have these taxis. And then eventually it's just driving, like actually driving a car. It's going to be something that people do for fun. Like they go somewhere to do it because nobody, like you, it's illegal to do it. Like you're just getting in a car that drives itself.
You're right. That's interesting. You're going to be going back, right? If you want to drive that car. Yeah, that is really interesting. But you mentioned the Jetsons. It's funny, right? I think we watch television shows or movies, and I always say, if you're seeing it in a movie, but yet it's not really happening in real life, it's just a matter of time that we see it.
Yeah, I think they are even testing air ones.
Yes. Yeah. Flying cars.
Yeah.
Yes.
So literally like the Jetsons.
Yes.
But
it's not, sorry to interrupt you. I think though, how does that change our potential practice as trial lawyers? I think it's just like anything. I think we just pivot and we adapt as trial
you sue
lawyers.
the companies. I mean, there's going to be accidents. Like
there's absolutely, unfortunately, going to be. I think it changes to not, is it just the driver that may have been negligent or reckless in their operation of the car, but is there a product defect to the car now, or something computerized that changed, or these advanced warning systems, things of that sort?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what made you decide to stop being a cop and go to law school?
So my path to finding, becoming an attorney or trial lawyer, my passion, I think, from when I was a little kid was always to work in law enforcement. I kind of always had that envision. That was my mind.
But you're like, no one else in your family did that?
My father was actually in law enforcement.
He was. Okay.
He was. Yeah.
Okay. That
So
makes sense.
I'm sure there's a connection there in that regard, right? And when I was trying to get hired in law enforcement, I actually had some job offers outside of Buffalo, and I elected to pass and stay in Buffalo, and was taking going through the process to try to get hired. And finally, I got a job offer to work at a university college for their police department. And just as I got accepted to the academy to do that, I got accepted into law school. So there were almost parallel tracks. And I had applied to law school really at that time because I knew I wanted to continue my education with this passion of always wanted to work in law enforcement, but I had just not yet been hired anywhere. So when I got accepted to law school, but yet I'm still starting the academy, I had made the decision to defer law school for a year. And then fast forward 12 months later, expecting to start law school, I got hired by the municipality or the town that I grew up in. And it was really a great honor to be able to work for that agency. So I deferred law school one more time. So now in my third year of starting in law enforcement, I made the decision to go to law school. I was working the night shift at the time, and so I got done with law school 3 years later, took the bar exam in New York and in Florida. But I really loved working, in law enforcement. It was a passion of mine. I enjoyed it. I was working in the town that I grew up in. I would say that I probably had the opportunity to work for one of the greatest police agencies in the country, so that was great. Very advanced and progressive in training and technology and leadership and those things. But I was also blessed with the idea that I was with a law firm that had a great support system and allowed me to work there as well.
And when did you make the shift to practicing law?
So I retired from law enforcement about 5 years ago. So in October of 2019. And then I switched into just solely focusing on trial law.
Were you doing both at some point?
There was an overlap, a period of time that I was working and doing both.
That's crazy. That's two really intense jobs.
It was, yes.
You must have been really tired.
You know what? As I say, there was a great part of my career where, I had didn't have any children. I wasn't married at the time, so it was. I think the focus was a little bit easier, right? But as time moved on, I had a good balance, and I spent a great part of my law enforcement working an overnight shift, so like 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. And then eventually I switched to like a 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. shift. So I would always kind of alter the schedule in that regard and allow things to work out. And then eventually I was blessed and I met my wife, and clearly she was the glue to help keep it all together for us.
That's awesome. You guys have kids?
We do. Yeah. We have 3 beautiful children.
Wow. How old are they?
We have a son who's 17. We have a daughter that is 15 and another daughter that is 13.
Okay. Awesome. Now, you said to me earlier that you think, what did you say? You win a case in deposition, something like that. I'm not doing it justice.
Yeah, I think we were having this little conversation about what do I love in the practice of law, right? Obviously, I love practicing law and I love being a trial lawyer, but what do I love and what am I most passionate about in my practice? And I would say there's probably 2 areas, and probably more, right? But if we had to hone right in on it.
Top 2.
Yeah, I would say I really, really love being in the courtroom. And if that is something that I could do all the time, every day, I would love it. But we don't get that opportunity every day to be in the courtroom and trying cases and things of that sort. So the next best thing where I really enjoy being is in a deposition, whether that's in person or remote now. I feel that your cases are primarily can be won in your depositions, and setting those up in your planning clearly starts at day one. But when you're in that moment, with the particular witness, I really believe you have the ability to control the path of your case. You're certainly not going to change bad facts potentially, or you're not going to rework the facts in that. But at the very least, I think you have an opportunity to prepare that case appropriately, get the required information that you need, so that eventually, if the case does wind up at trial, you're there for it. But I think you also give the insurance companies and the defense attorneys the optics that this is a case that they're serious about. They've taken the time to prepare seriously about a deposition, and they're treating it as, you've heard Satch Oliver talk about the phrase depositions are trial, right? So you're treating your depositions are trial, and I really believe that he's 100% onto that, and that is that you can win your case on your depositions.
Satch won't let me interview him.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. Actually, Ed interviewed him. I think he interviewed him and Philip Miller.
Okay. Well, I'll give Satch a call and I'll
tell him why
say, please,
it should have been
please.
Maria. Like, why?
Right.
Why Ed?
I will. I'll pass that along. He's a good friend of mine.
I'm sure he would totally.
Yes.
Yeah. Just giving him a hard time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll keep him in line.
Yeah. So do you record your depositions?
We do. Yeah. We.
Does everybody? Is that just everybody records?
You know what's interesting? They don't, right?
Really?
They really don't. And I think when I talk with lawyers and I teach, at the AAJ deposition colleges, not only at the entry ones, but throughout in the advanced college. And we talk to lawyers all over the place. And it seems like it comes back to the number one thing of why lawyers don't. Either one, they don't understand the technology behind it, or 2, there's a huge cost into recording your deposition. So you figure between a cost of a transcript and cost of a videographer, things get really expensive. But as John Romano always says, if there is a deposition worth taking, then it needs to be a video recorded. And I think he's spot on with that. So in our firm, we certainly try to do that in every case that we can. But with the advent of technology today with Zoom, and of course, states are different, right? In the way that you can video and the notices that have to be sent previous to the deposition, but also does a timer have to be displayed? What has to be said on and off the record? Things of that sort. But I think with the advent of technology, just as we're sitting here today with multiple cameras in this room, you can set up your own depositions. And if you listen to like Mark Lanier give his examples of how he sets those things up, I think as trial lawyers, I think we can be better at trying to do these things on our own. So the cost comes down a little bit. It's not prohibitive, and we have the ability to do it. And
I mean, I think that's easy to say for I think the younger generations, that comes really easy to them, and they can probably even do it from cell phones, because there are people that set up podcasts from just cell phones.
Sure.
But I think that's a lot to ask of our 50 plus age lawyers.
I think you've nailed it. There's no doubt, right? It's that, kind of teaching the old dog new tricks, get a lot of whys. Why should we do this? We don't need to do it. Well, the case is going to settle anyways. Why?
But even like the technology, like I just think that they're not, like just from my experience, especially if you get into like the 60-year-olds, like there's no way. Sorry. And I'm not, we're all going to go through that, right? Like I see it with my resistance with technology, whereas my kids are like, they use voice for everything.
Yes.
Like I'm like, why? Like that's so annoying to me.
Well, I joke all the time. The phone calls that, I'd get from my mom, and she'd call and she'd say, hey, I can't figure out this TV remote.
Right.
And so then you'd go over and you'd have to try and figure out, and it's really just pressing a button. But I feel like as you're talking about, you and I are living that, right? Like there are TV remotes that you and I probably can't figure out right now.
It took me a while.
That we have to ask our children, right?
No joke. The one that we have right now, it's like, I don't know. It's not Apple. It's like, I don't know what it is, Samsung.
Sure.
And I still to this day struggle with it.
Right.
And my kids get frustrated with me. And I'm like, I'm not even old.
No.
And I'm like having these issues. Like I like start to feel for the older generations that I like, my parents that I made fun of so much.
Yes.
And like my husband's 51 and he's like the opposite. Like he's so technologically advanced and he's like, you are 12 years younger than me, Maria. Like, why are you struggling with this? Like,
Right.
This is like pathetic.
Sure.
And I'm like, no, I can't figure it out. But it's, what's funny though? It's not even that I can't figure it out. It's that I don't want to.
Okay. All right. Well, that's interesting. Why?
Because it just takes work and energy. And
Does it interest you?
Not at all.
Okay.
Like zero.
Well, the good thing is that your husband has got it figured out, it's a perfect compliment.
Yes and no. He gets very annoyed. So he's like, you can figure it out. You're younger than me.
So here's a question. What about AI then? How does that work? How do you use much of that in your, and I know am I supposed to ask you questions? That's like a rule violation.
Everybody keeps doing it. But I don't know. I think it's just like.
Ed and Jay told me I'm allowed to ask questions.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Of course they did. Everybody tried yesterday. It was kind of funny. Do we use it in our organization or do I use it personally?
Either or. Like what's your, how do you feel about it?
It depends. I hate to give you the lawyer answer. What we don't want is we are very against content generated by AI.
Yes.
You can use it for very simple things like, I don't know, like a description of a picture or something like that. But we don't use it a ton. I personally use it a lot, believe it or not, for math.
Okay.
Yeah. So I will have it give me all sorts of scenarios. Like instead of me having to call my accountant, I run scenarios through ChatGPT.
That's really neat. Okay. I didn't even think about that.
It's the best thing in the world, like for math. And you can give it like literally scenarios, even like in investing, like if this is the percent and I have it for X amount of years, like, and play with different numbers to like understand.
Sure.
Yeah, for that I use it a lot. And then when I'm helping my oldest with math and I don't know how to explain it to him, like I know how to do it, but I don't know how to explain it to him, I will go to ChatGPT and have ChatGPT explain it.
And do you see like the success in that? Like, is it?
Oh, absolutely. Like one time they were asking us a very like kind of difficult question to I don't remember what it was. It had to do with like economics or accounting. So I went to ChatGPT and I was like, can you break down this subject for an 11-year-old in a way that they would understand? And it came back and it was like, imagine you have X amount of Pokemon cards. And like it literally broke it down for them. And my husband was like really trying. He was like pulling up YouTube videos. I was like, no, let's ask ChatGPT. And for that, it was phenomenal. Like, because they got the concept and it's something that we probably wouldn't have been able to explain to them. Wish I could remember what it was. It had something to do with I think investing, but till they were like 15 or 17, like it was something complex.
And it became clear.
It became really clear. And
I think AI, it's like we said about the TV remote, right? If we are resistant to learning about it, I think by the time that we decide to learn about it, it's going to be too late. And what I look at it is I 100% agree with you about the content. There's all kinds of stories already, right, about just in the legal space, lawyers trying to use AI to write motions or do things like that. And little do they know those cases are fake and then there's issues. But I think like anything, whether it's the video camera in the deposition or it's AI in your practice, it's another tool. And I think if you're using those tools and you're able to help with efficiencies and things of that sort, I think it's incredible. There's an AI browser, including ChatGPT. It's called Perplexity. Have you ever used that?
Of course, yes.
And I love Perplexity because it's you think at least it's giving you the authority behind what the answer is, and you then can at least fact check maybe potentially what the source is and on from there. So it's amazing. But in our space, between the summaries that you can do with whether it be medical summaries or depositions and things of that sort. But I think it's really, I've asked friends in other industries, and I think the legal space is really progressive, or at least trying to do a lot with AI.
Well, you know what I've used it for? I have so we have a Mexican entity and a U.S. entity.
Oh.
And there's something called transfer pricing that you have to do by law when you have a Mexican entity that supports an entity outside of Mexico. And it's actually, the rules are very complicated and in Spanish. So I went to ChatGPT and I was like, can you explain to me transfer pricing? And I gave it like the scenario, and like it was clearer and it made more sense to me than the explanation I got from our Mexican lawyers that speak perfect English.
Wow.
Yeah. And
now, were you confident in now what did you use ChatGPT there, or like Perplex, or what did you use?
I used ChatGPT.
You did.
That's what I have downloaded. So that's what I typically use, although we've played with different ones.
Sure.
So I used ChatGPT, and yes, it was just like it made sense. And I actually took it and sent it to the lawyer, and I was like, is this accurate?
Okay.
And they were like, yes, that's what I mean. And I was like, well, you didn't explain it like this.
Right. He's like,
and it was very complex because there are all these like different rules and it, you know, I think the problem is going to become when, first of all, they're pulling from Google.
sure.
And at some point, Google's going to be like, hey, well, you can't pay me then.
Yes.
Like you can't, like we're going to have that issue with how is this monetized? That's one. Number two, when the internet's flooded with fake stuff that potentially was created by AI, we're not going to be able to tell the difference of what's real and what's not. And then we're not going to be able to trust Perplexity or ChatGPT that's pulling from Google. So I think it's going to create this really, I don't know, muddled, like it's just going to be, I'm like interested to see what happens with that.
I agree. And I think those hallucinations or the fake information that's coming out is probably the scariest part, right?
It's so scary.
That's number one. Number two, you said it originally, is creativity. And you certainly, what you guys do in your business is amazing, but it's because you do good work, but there's content involved, right?
Well, and lawyers write our content.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's a good fact.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting question. Like, I find myself sometimes going to like an AI-based program to Google, like I'm using the word Google, right?
Right.
But to look
search,
something up to search versus just going to Google. Do you find yourself doing that at all? You don't?
I don't. No.
Okay. Like my wife and I were making something the other night to eat, and it was a dessert recipe. And I went on like Perplexity and I said, give me this recipe. And
I haven't done that.
You haven't done that?
No.
Yeah. Again, to your point, I am getting the information from Google ultimately. It's just in a different format.
I trust the Google, and I mean, you could say I'm biased, right? Like our whole livelihood is based off of like the Google algorithm. But knowing as much as I know, I trust the Google algorithm more than a platform that hallucinates. Because you can go to ChatGPT and ask it a question that it doesn't know the answer to, and it'll make up an answer. I've done it. It'll make up an answer, and I'll be like, no, that's wrong. And then it'll make up another answer. And I'm like, no, that's wrong. And it'll make up and I've done it where it's like 20 different answers. And I'm like screenshotting
That's scary.
Sending it to like colleagues of mine and my husband and being like, guys, look at this. And they're like, what the fuck? Like, this is crazy.
Yeah. But people are relying on that.
That's the scary part.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, why doesn't it just say, I don't know?
Right. How about the commercial? I don't know if is it Microsoft or is it Google's AI, where it's like the person is having a conversation with this. Is it Gemini? Maybe.
I think it is.
Have
I
you
think it
seen
might have been
this?
Gemini. Yeah.
I mean, it's literally like you and I are having a conversation. You ask me a question, and I'll respond. So
yeah. I mean, it's. I definitely think it's scary. I don't think it's going to be what people think it's going to be. I just don't see it. I think it's too odd. I think it'll just help automate a lot of things. And do I think that there will be robots that, I mean, I know that they're already like Elon Musk is making them that will be able to like clean and like do, yes. And that's great. That sounds phenomenal. I'll buy one tomorrow. Like, and cook. I mean, we already have machines that cook for you, right? So it is
Sure.
very Jetsons if you think of it.
Sure.
It very much is. But do I think that it's going to take over the world? No, because I think we're going to run. And then if people stop creating content, where the hell is AI pulling its information from?
That's right.
So we're going to come to a crossroads. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Where it's going to be like, wait, this doesn't make sense anymore. I don't know when it'll happen. I don't know if it'll happen as fast as we think because, like, remember the whole internet thing? It was like, oh, it's going to put stores out of business. And like, it took a long time for it to actually impact retail.
Right.
I don't think adoption is as quickly as we think. An iPhone took 5 years for adoption in the US. I was listening to this fascinating episode on Meta or Facebook, I guess Meta now. And it was just like, that was so fascinating. Like things didn't happen as quick as we think that they happen. Right. So I don't know. We'll see. I think it's interesting times. And sometimes I do worry for my kids, but sometimes I'm like, okay, well, maybe it won't be as
sure.
drastic.
Well, and there is, right, that the level of like children using AI and I know schools prohibit the use of it, right? And there's colleges that have their own programs on the back end that are fact checking to see if, did AI write this essay or they didn't? So yeah, I think there has to be that checks and balances. And how is, if we, as I always try and say, if we keep it in check as it's a tool versus it's the end all be all, I think it's the safe approach. But you're right. I mean, it's dangerous to just trust it.
Yeah, and look, maybe they'll make it so that doesn't happen. But the fact that they can't figure out how to get it to stop hallucinating or lying or like being deceitful, like that's scary to me. And that's like kind of human-like if you think about it, right? That there's that human element to it that is scary to me, right? I don't know. And I mean, the world is changing. Like my kids, their school, my oldest, it's all on iPad.
Yes.
And
same.
I really dislike that, but it seems to just be the norm now. And I'm like, I'm trying to keep him off screens. And then you give him a screen. And then, the selling point is, oh no, but they have all the textbooks. And my son's like, we never pull out the textbooks.
Yeah. And so how old is your son?
12.
12. Okay. So we have the same thing. So our two daughters use Chromebooks, right? So at least there's a keyboard and a computer. My son is solely on an iPad and there's no books. Like it's no book, no paper.
I think his is a Chromebook.
Is it?
I think so.
I think it's hard.
Opens and I think it does. Yeah, I think it does have a keyboard.
I think about when I work, like I still want to feel I do a lot of work electronically and I can do it remote and I use my iPad for all my note taking and all those things. But as far as I still want to have a piece of paper to review a document or do things like that or read a book. I still read paper books.
Yeah, I do both. I have a Kindle for when I travel, but there's something about a paper book that to me is just like magical and it feels so good. And there's just something about it that is like, I don't know. There's just something energetically about it that I like. Maybe because like my grandpa had a library, like he had a room this size, like imagine books everywhere. So like I grew up with that where like my kids they have Kindles, but they have so many books, like all over the room. We have like, we're out of room for books everywhere that there can be books.
My wife jokes with me all the time because like several days a week, a new book is being delivered to our house with Amazon. And my wife's like what? Did you read the last one?
I know. My husband tells me the same thing.
I'm like, it's on the list. It's on the list. But you go to these conferences and you talk. You'll give me an idea, or Matt will give me an idea, and I'll want to get it out if you think if you guys think it's good. It's interesting you talk about your you said your grandfather had a library. I just read something about the dying period of libraries and houses.
I mean, I actually I don't think I've ever been to another house that had one, if I'm honest. Like he also had like the big, what are they called? The record players?
Yeah.
And one of the walls actually was just records. Now that I think about it, he just had records everywhere, and he had like, the record player and then books everywhere. And it was just like very cozy. And he spent a lot of time there. Like he'd lock himself in there and just listen to classical music. And yeah, I don't see that anymore.
Yeah. Got to get the books back, right?
I know. I've always loved books, and my kids love books, and they read a lot. Feel like we've done something right with that.
Absolutely. Well, when I knew I was coming here, I said to my wife, I'm like, you should come, and the kids can come. And we have 3 children that look at us and say, I do not want to miss school. I'm like,
that's my oldest
right.
told us last week. He's like, I really don't want to miss school another day.
Yeah. So that's amazing.
But I think it's because it holds them back. So then he's like struggling to catch up for the 2 days that he missed. And he's in a pretty like traditional, he is. The other 2 aren't very traditional, very like strict school, right? Very academic.
Yes.
Because he's very academic, right? Like we let our kids be. This kid happens to be very academic. So he's like, I don't want to miss school. And we're like, because they were going to come here too.
Yeah.
Because his parents live an hour away.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So and he was like, no, Sebastian doesn't want to miss school.
Okay.
So it's funny that we have the same.
It is. There's a lot of pressure, right? And there's pressure in all aspects for the kids, right? With so many different external with sports or other activities and the demands. I think about
full-time job.
I think about childhood sports growing up, and I played hockey. And incidentally, so one of my law partners, John Froman, who's the name of the firm, was my high school hockey coach for 4 years. So fast forward years later, and now I've got the privilege to work with him. But nevertheless, so playing youth sports, you'd go to hockey practice, you'd go to games, and that would be the end of it. Now today, my son plays hockey, and you not only go to practice several days a week, and then you have your games, but you have to go to the specialized goalie coach, and you have to go to this camp, and there's like a specialization for the guy that'll help you shoot the puck better versus the guy that helps you save it better. There's just so much, and if you're the other Johnny on the team's doing it, you feel compelled that you want to be doing it.
I have a really big issue with school and like traditional school. Like we homeschooled last year. We had a private teacher that homeschooled them. Obviously, it didn't work out since like they're all back in school. But I have a really big issue with the institution of school, the way that extracurricular activities are done. Kids are so busy and have so much pressure at such a young age. I don't like it.
Yeah. My wife and I just talked about that. Well, and it's interesting. Our 13-year-old just came to us and said, I think I want to be homeschooled. That just happened like about a week ago. So we had this, so we're kind of talking about this conversation. But I think you're right. Like, I mean, I know my parents were busy with us, but I don't think this busy.
It wasn't as serious. I feel like everything is like so serious, right? Like, my kid will miss an assignment because he missed a day of school, and I get an automatic email. And it's just like, it's too much. It's like, so what? He missed it. Like, is he failing? No, he has an A. The fuck are you emailing me for? Like, I'm busy,
Right.
like my son's soccer practice. It's so funny you said it. 3 times a week. And then he had specific goalie practice. And then they play on the weekend. And then they have tournaments. And then the parents are like, oh, this isn't even bad. This is a local tournament. Most people do travel where you actually have to get on an airplane. And you can only stay at the hotel that they picked.
Yes.
It's against the rules to stay anywhere else. And I'm like, well, that alone, because I'm a snob, I'm like, that alone I could not do.
Right.
Like when did everything become so serious?
Yes. I don't know, but
like, where's
absolutely.
their childhood?
You're right.
My son, his coach last year for soccer, he was more scared of the coach than me. And he'd be like, we can't be late. He's super scary. He's scarier than you. And I was very offended. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, he's scarier than me?
That's really funny. So our kids have they go to like this personal trainer. Again, here's your athletics performance trainer, right? So so our daughters are equestrian riders. So they ride horses. My wife told me when we first met, she goes, listen, if our daughters ride horses, they will fall in love with the horses and not with the boys. So we're at 15 and 13.
Yeah, I need to get my daughter.
We're seeing how that's going, but
did it work?
Yeah, it's been good so far.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's amazing. But in any event, our kids go to this trainer, and he's great, but he's super regimented on like diet and like what drinks you're supposed to have and things like that. And and the kids, like, they're all in. Like, I mean, they're so, like, but if like we were to tell them you should have like that.
Oh,
No, but Mr. Jones said to this is what I
I
have
mean,
to
I
do.
might just hire a trainer to tell them.
Yeah, right. How fun is it? But you said something. So your son is a goalie in soccer?
Yeah, it's the most stressful thing
Okay,
in
so
the
you
world.
got to tell me about, because so we have a goalie as a hockey player.
Yeah,
And someone always asks, like, what is that like? I'm like, it's wild.
it's
You
very
you know
stressful
how your child played in that particular game, to, based
off their
on
mood.
how many parents come up to you after the
Oh,
game.
and say, oh, he
Is
did
soccer
great.
like that?
Yes.
Okay, it is.
Yes. Although
And is there only one I don't know anything. Is there one soccer goalie, or could there be like multiple
there
goalies?
can be multiple, but this year it's just him. So it just sucks because we can't miss any games because we feel like we're like letting the team down, and we care for the other kids. Like they are like the sweetest and we love them, but it's just a lot also because our son is he has a lot of character. So if we lose the game, he's in a really bad mood.
Sure.
So we feel like, okay, well, let's go see how our day's going to go. Like, this is going to determine, right? And he cares. And like, they lost a game the other day. He was crying, like, and it was like unfair because it was offside and they didn't catch it. And like the parents started yelling. Some of the parents got kicked out. I'm like, guys, chill. It's like still just a kid's game, right? But it's a lot. I'm really interested to see, like, we always kind of measure every generation, like millennials, Gen Z, like boomers, like we're always measuring everybody, right? I'm really curious, like, how this generation is gonna play out because in some ways, I think this generation has really involved parents that know a lot more about like raising children than just because of access to information. They have really present fathers compared to like before.
True.
Right? But I think they have really strict childhoods. They don't get to go outside and play the way we did. They have a lot of access to technology and they have really regimented schedules, and they're under a lot of stress and pressure at a very young age. So there's like good and bad, and I'm like curious to see how this generation kind of plays out as a whole.
Interesting. What do you forecast?
I don't know. I really hope that the combination of having more present parents will offset how their childhood is strict, and it'll actually be a good thing because they had a lot of boundaries, but they had a lot of love and more like gentle-ish parenting than like maybe some of us had, right? So I hope that it's a good combo that kind of offsets the scenario, but I think we're going to have a lot of anxious kids.
What was it? What did you say? A lot
Anxious.
Anxious. Yeah, I think you see that.
Yeah.
Well, there's always like there's so much clinical use today now and with children, which is unfortunate. And I understand there's a place and a need in a certain regard. But I agree with you. I there are a lot of restrictions, I think, right? From even, we're forced today as parents to monitor phone activities, right? Like just because of all the bad that can be out there, and our kids are targeted. Yeah. But I remember we talked. You're originally from California, and then relocated. But I remember as a child, like going out and riding my bike with friends, and you didn't have cell phones, you didn't have any way to get a hold of your parents, but you were just free to do it. And your parents, you just came home later,
and it felt so good.
It felt so good, but
I remember it.
But today, and we live in a really good, safe community. Today, I feel sometimes awkward letting our kids just go in to walk the dog by themselves.
Yep. I don't know when that, I've been like thinking about this lately. Like, when did we become afraid to let our kids do the things that we did? Right? Is it access to information? Is it just our anxiety levels are higher? Like, I'm a very anxious person, but so is my mom. Yet she would let me go rollerblading by myself at like 12. Like, I would not let my 12-year-old do that.
Yeah. And I've never asked my parents the question. Maybe you have.
No, I haven't.
But is that, clearly they would be worried, right? If we were out. I mean,
I think it was the norm.
That's a question. Like, but today it's Yeah, I mean,
I think it was the norm. I think it was just the norm. So everybody did it, and now people don't do it.
yeah. Well, I'm going to give you a glimpse into what's coming at you, and that is soon, like we have now, is a new driver in the house.
I mean, my
So
son is so my oldest, thank God, is like so responsible. It's my middle that I'm worried about.
middle is another boy or daughter?
Another boy.
Another boy.
Yeah, but he's
Okay.
like your typical middle kid.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
He's a sweetheart, but he's...
Yeah, our son's is amazing. He's been great with driving, very responsible, but still, it's
And do you have an app where you can see if they speed? Because you saw that case, right? Where,
yes.
what's happened with that? I
That was in
Googled
Michigan, right? Yeah,
I don't remember. I know that they were going to go after the parents because...
I believe the mom was charged in that case, and I think it was out of Michigan, and it was. But
I'm actually glad. Sorry, not sorry. Like, if you have a child driving, it is yours, and you know that they're going 100 miles, and like,
sure,
the hell are you doing?
yeah, I mean, I agree. You're a parent. I think you have to step in and take action. I understand
aren't you
there's
worried
not
for your
everything will
kid?
be in your control, but we're seeing it.
But like,
We're seeing it in other aspects, not just the driving, but unfortunately these shooting events, and it just kind of goes on and on. No, it's not good. But we do. So so you monitor and you hope that, and he's great. He's been good. I mean, but no real pushback at all, which is good. But it's that next level you feel, I think, as you're going through parenting. Like I always give the story about, like with hockey, and him playing hockey, there was a point where he needed me to tie his skates. There was a point that he needed me to carry his bag into the rink. There was a point where he needed me to drive him to the rink. All three of those things have fallen by the wayside now. And it's an evolution. It's bittersweet, right? Because it's great to see your children grow and evolve and become mature young adults. But it's also sad in a way as a parent of realizing that your kids don't need you for certain things.
I'm not looking forward to it.
No.
Okay, let's shift gears and talk a little bit about running a law firm. You're a partner?
I am.
Okay. Tell me what's your role at the firm?
So we're going through this interesting transition of changing roles. So John Froman is the owner, I guess, and you'd say managing partner of the firm. So he controls as the majority of the day-to-day, but things are changing for us and how, structure and things like that will look moving forward. But we somewhat have, I guess for lack of a better term, like some team type situations.
Okay.
So
like pods?
Yeah, kind of like pods. So I, even though we're a smaller firm, so I have two assistants that work with me. But generally on our catastrophic cases, we kind of handle more as a team approach. But I would say from a perspective of, like I would say I'm really forward thinking in the technology aspect of it.
That's awesome.
So whether it be in our systems, I think I'm a really big systems person. We are a very systematic firm in that with like checklists, right? Like John Romano always talks about it, like being the checklist guy. And it's true. So we have tons of checklists.
Okay.
I am really intrigued, and I do want to talk with the man from, is it Zencase, I think?
I'm not familiar with that one.
I'm not either. I know that Joe Camerlingo uses them.
And does he like it?
And he speaks very highly of it.
Most firms, I would argue, that do this really well use FileVine with Lead Docket.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but whatever you do, if you're doing any advertising, any marketing at all, you gotta have Lead Docket.
Okay.
And I don't own stock in them. I don't even know if that's a thing. I wish I did because I'm like their number one salesperson, and like they don't even know it.
Well, I'm good friends with your co-founder there, Dino.
I don't know.
Yeah, you had him on your show. I won't tell Dino you forgot about him. Columbo.
He's a co-founder of Lead Docket?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
He didn't say this to me. I'm going to text him. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
But he sold it, right? Because now FileVine.
I don't know the details behind all of that.
Yeah,
but
of course. FileVine owns it now. So he must have sold it.
Okay. Yes.
Good for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you sure about this?
Now you're making me, we should text him right now. Be like, I'm with Grillo right now, and he says that you're a genius. No, I would say I'm 99.99% I'm correct on that.
I texted him, so we're going to fact check this little fact. Oh my God, he said it's true. Yes.
Make sure I get credit for that, by the way.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would agree. So I would agree with you. Filevine, I think, is the majority of lawyers I speak with, they're using it. But it's interesting. Like our listservs are always inundated with the question of, hey, we're looking to do this, we're looking to do that.
It's just Falcon is a pain in the ass to set up.
That's interesting, and I think that seems to be the consensus. But
But it's the
I
same
think
thing
it's
with Lit
not to
5.
be in a rush, right? I
Yeah.
think you have to plan that deployment, if you will. But I think for us, I think it would be, we won't have that painstaking issue that some people have of migration.
Right. You won't.
Because, right, one program doesn't want to talk nice to the other. Whereas our system is set up in a way that is very file structured, just like Filevine is. And we've had many meetings with Filevine, and we're really close. So we actually had recent meetings with all of our staff to get their input on what they liked, what they didn't like, and things of that sort. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to 2025.
Yeah, I'm excited
in
for
rolling
you.
it out.
Because
Yes,
that's going to be really cool. What about, do you use AI for demands?
we don't.
Okay.
We don't.
You should
do
talk
that.
to Even Up.
I have talked with them
Okay.
in the past, and I think it's definitely interesting and neat technology.
I know a lot of people that use it.
I listened to. Have you heard of Supio?
Yes, I have. I don't remember how, but I have. What do they do?
So they do a kind of a similar. They can put out demands,
Mhm.
and they will, like, for example, they'll take maybe. I think they can take all of your case files actually, and they
Really?
can, and they can input them into the system, and it's a closed world, right, or closed environment, and from there they can analyze. So, like Bob Simon just talked about this on I'm not sure where I either I talked to him in person or something, but the idea is that you can get the data, whether it be on the police reports or investigative reports, witness statements, deposition transcripts, etc., and you can start to ask it questions. You can ask it to do summaries of transcripts. You can have it do demand letters. So it's really interesting. I know that Even Up does just demand letters, right?
No, they do
don't?
all sorts of things.
Oh, they do.
Yeah, I just interviewed Ray, who's one of the founders, who's a really good friend of mine.
Okay.
Listen to the podcast.
Okay, I
He
will.
really talked about all the stuff that they do. And we have a rule here that you can't, I should have told you this before, you can't mention Bob Simon.
Really?
No, he's like the most mentioned person on my podcast. I think
Right.
people get annoyed.
Well,
So now you made that. And see, it wasn't even me this time. Somebody else. Well, I think it's everybody mentions Bob now.
they do.
Everyone. Yeah.
Didn't know that. I
It
didn't.
must be nice to
Do you
be
realize that I just met Bob in person for the first time?
Really?
Yeah. And I was at Steve Gersing invited me to speak at his conference in Vegas in September.
What was it? What conference was it?
It's Law 360.
I haven't been.
I think
no.
he's been doing it, from what I understand, he's been doing it a long time. But
I love Bob. He's one of my favorite people in the space, top 5. He's a client
Is
of
he?
ours.
Yeah.
He's an amazing human.
So we text like regularly now because of like he's a Pittsburgh Steelers fan.
Mhm.
Obviously, there's this little team in Buffalo. It's called the Buffalo Bills. You
Yeah,
might have heard of them.
That's
Yeah.
the only thing. That's the only reason I know what Buffalo is.
Really good. Well, hey, listen, if that's the only thing you remember, that's good.
Yeah.
So Bob and I chat, and I think there's a chance that we might see each other in a game,
That's
Pittsburgh versus
awesome.
Buffalo. But we'll see if that happens. But no, it was really great to meet him. It was, and he is. I won't say his name anymore, but the guy we're talking about.
Yeah.
I love talking to him about this AI stuff. Like it's
Yeah.
incredible. So I'm trying to think, which one did he just tell me about? It's like Clip, maybe.
Oh, yes.
Is that it? Did I get
Yep.
it right? But
Yes.
when you search it, it doesn't. You don't put in like.
I don't know anything about it, but I know it's Clip
Okay.
because
yeah.
I talked to Bob about Clip before.
Yeah. So that's kind of interesting. I think it sounds like if you're saying like Even Up does more than just demands, it sounds like maybe these companies, whether that or Supio or Clip, or maybe do a lot of the same things.
Yeah.
I think.
I think you got to do some research. That's the other thing, right? I think one thing I've noticed with law firms is that sometimes they don't want to do like the hard work, which is like you really got to research, whether it's a case management software or an intake software or an AI software or an SEO agency. You really got to take the time to research because once you implement one of these things, it's so hard to undo it,
Yeah.
especially case management.
I agree with you. It's great though, like to talk with all the lawyers around us, right, and see what they're doing and what success is. I think, it's like anything. I mean, if you were to go to a new city and check out a restaurant, you're going to search some reviews or you're going to talk with somebody
Yeah.
and get a referral, right?
I think that's changed a lot with like all the masterminds and coaching and conferences. I mean, I've never, ever seen this many conferences ever. So I think that's been something that's been really good post-COVID. Like, I almost feel like COVID removed that and people realized how valuable it was. And then it just exploded.
Back at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It does. I do feel like there is an awful lot of conferences, right? And I mean, in your business, you probably would know it way more than I do.
Yeah. 15
Uh,
a year
15 a year?
that I do. We do 20.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So that's a lot.
Yeah.
That is a lot.
I think we'll probably do more next year.
You
of
do?
that.
Okay.
Yeah. I won't. My team will.
Your team will. Yeah. Well, I mean, again, I think there are some really good groups that have kind of blossomed and been around for a long time. Some newer ones. But hey, I think you find your groove as for our side of it. I mean, your situation is different as to why you might seek one out over the other.
Yeah.
But what's the sweet spot? Is it a really large or is it more of a small conference? Have you found that balance?
Yeah, we do both. So I think I think they both have their pluses and minuses, right? Like from like a vendor standpoint, if it's a really large one, well, then there are so many people that could potentially be a client, right? But when it's a small one like this one, you can really get to know everybody. It's small groups, it's more intimate. I personally like the smaller ones for like actually getting shit done and like being able to record. I think the big ones are like there's like too much going on. They're more fun, but they have too much going on.
Yeah.
But we do both equally. What we don't do is state specific.
Okay.
Like I've done GTLA once, but that's it.
Okay. But I'm sure you're getting enough exposure, I would think, from the larger conferences that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we do great with conferences. It took a really long time. Like we've been doing them religiously since like a year before COVID.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes, so that is interesting in your space. To go from conference to COVID is to have no in-person.
Yeah,
events.
I mean, COVID, we grew through COVID. So I think COVID gave us a lot. There was a lot of bad that came with COVID, but a lot of good came from it, I think, at least for us. But I think for vendors, conferences are like traditional media is for lawyers. Like lawyers will do like a couple billboards and then they're like, oh, it didn't work. And they take them down. Like it took us 3 years to sign a client from a conference.
So true. I think you nailed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And we see that. I mean, Buffalo's a much smaller, or Western New York, Buffalo, Syracuse, right? Much smaller community from obviously like, being in Miami or South Florida or we're at California, right? Things like those large markets.
Yeah. You're kind of lucky.
I think people miss that. You think we're going to sprinkle a little bit of advertising dollars. Oh, wait a minute, the phone didn't ring. I better stop.
Yeah, and
it's a long sustainable process, and
it is. And I do think we are moving into an era where you really need to do a lot. Where there's so many firms that have come into the space, and there are so many marketing channels now that it's so diluted that you can't even just do one marketing channel anymore. Like you need multiple marketing channels. You need to have a brand, whether it's through social or traditional media or grassroots, community involvement type. But I think that we are going to shift away from the days of let me just like do one thing and like get cases from that one thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's going to get harder.
It's interesting when you talk with some of the larger marketing firms or firms that do a lot of marketing. What's really interesting to me is the shift from, I guess you would call it traditional, like TV, where it's now going heavy digital. Like people are moving a lot of resources away from that.
I think it's been heavy digital for a long time, but and we don't sell traditional media, but I'm still a really big believer in it. I think billboards, radio, social media. I think TV is probably my least favorite. OTT, which I guess is digital, right? So social media, it is digital. So when you factor in social media and OTT into the equation, that's the money I think it's being shifted.
Okay.
But I think billboards still work really great. I think radio works really great. if done correctly, right?
What's the ideal, like radio? Like, what do you, with your clients?
I don't think we have any. Maybe we have one or two clients that do radio. We work with primarily trial lawyers. Trial lawyers do not want to go do all of that.
Yes.
So like that's always the struggle of like, can you at least take on one of these channels, right? Radio is just really expensive, but I do think it works. Our clients that do traditional typically do billboards.
Okay.
Yeah. And their conversion from digital, their cost per case is much lower than the people that don't. Probably about half the cost.
Really?
Mhm.
That's interesting.
Well, they convert better. Think about it. You Google car accident lawyer, and then you see a firm pop up on the first page of Google that you've seen their billboard. And you're like, oh, yeah, that's who I was. Like, there's trust.
Multiple touches, right?
Yes.
That's the idea.
Now I think you need 11.
Yeah, it's wild.
It used to be
wild.
like 3.
Yeah.
We're at a, thanks to social media and all the scrolling and all the ads you get, it's so much higher, right? So, yeah, of course, it makes perfect sense that they convert better.
Agree.
It's just the hard part is so many trial lawyers are like, I'm not putting my face in a billboard. That's beneath me. And I'm like, but if that's how you're going to help more people.
It's interesting you say that about, I don't want to put my face up there, but there's multiple ways of doing it, right? Like I look at just like, let's say Dino, for example. Like he does some really, really great community stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Amazing. Like really good stuff. I think the idea as trial lawyers, if we really think about what we're doing, that is, number one, we're helping people. We're in an amazing position to do that. Unfortunately, they need our help, right? We wish they didn't, but they do. And you have, hopefully your cases are making people safer, right? And I think that does happen. And I think that I've seen it. So it's good.
But I agree with you. I think there are different ways to advertise, and it doesn't have to be, here's my face and my name of the firm, right? Like people can get super creative and have it be authentic to who they are and to their brand. And it doesn't have to be cheesy. Like you don't have to like do a commercial where, you're like dancing around. Like, I don't know. I think that's going to evolve. I am seeing more and more trial firms do billboards, which is really neat to see.
Well, if you think about it, Maria, like who is our ultimate audience as trial lawyers? Clearly,
the average person.
Clearly the client, right? But the average person also one day could be who? A juror.
Oh, true.
And if we think big picture in that regard, we think that we are hopefully educating and we are talking to the community. And we're not, like you said, we're not coming across as, not credible or authentic, as John Romano always says. And so you're educating, I guess, through your messages, and hopefully you're kind of changing the landscape as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
Maria, thank you.
This was great. I appreciate it.
It was a lot of fun. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Tom for everything he shared with us today. If you found this story valuable, please share it with someone you want to see succeed. Subscribe so you never miss an episode, and leave a 5-star review. It goes a long way to help others discover the show.